Hello, my name is Natoya, and growing up, I've always enjoyed my family experience or my family dynamic. Um, it's always been me, my parents, of course, mom, dad, and then my other two sisters. It's only three girls in my family, and I've always said like I wanted a brother. Um, but that was not the case because my mom was done after the last one. And, we've always had a sense of love, had a sense of nurturing towards each other. And my mom is an impeccable mom. I know everybody says that, but she is. And I've always noticed that she made it work at any point in our lives, whether it's her working and making sure she's taking care of the family, or like if we're sick, she always makes sure she was there. Even small points like Valentine's Day, she made her effort to make sure that when we got home there were like some forms of gifts, some forms of expression of her love, right? So just from that family dynamic alone, I noticed that that was something that I wanted to create on my own. So, watching my mom raise us, or at least just living in that family dynamic, it did make me think about what I possibly would want that dynamic to be for me. Now, growing up, my parents stretched, I could say focused more on the idea of getting education and, career building. And so I could say that I was very focused on that for a long, long time. But then I got married. And once I got married, I could say the trajectory kind of changed, but it wasn't something that I wanted right away. And so we didn't talk about how much kids we wanted or if we wanted kids. There was even a point where I wasn't even sure if I wanted kids. And so that idea kind of just floated by. It was something that you kind of just allowed to happen if it happened. Going into the aspect of marriage, I can say the starting point of it all was definitely a huge adjustment. Um, like before, I was with my family, so I kind of just got married and boop, I'm living with someone else now. And that was a huge change for me, which was hard. I could say the first couple of years actually was pretty difficult. I think it's the idea of like adjusting to living with someone else. And I know it sounds funny, like, duh, I've lived with other people my whole life. But in this aspect, it's a male that now, I've had a dating relationship for however long, and I've just never lived with them before. So I do believe that it was a challenge that we were adjusting to on both of our ends, because I'm sure he would have his own perspective as well. And so that was a little rough. And when we got pregnant, that was one of those shockers. I mean, we're not oblivious, right? But yes, it was a shocker because I think we just wasn't prepared, right? And we knew it could happen, but we just wasn't prepared for it. And so leading up to that and finding out, it was like, okay, like it was I wasn't feeling well, and I decided like, all right, let me go. Why not take a test? And I took it and I was like, huh. It's saying something that I don't think it actually means. So I said, let me go get a doctor's appointment to just clear my mind. And the doctor's appointment did not clear my mind. And it actually did tell me what I saw was actually correct. And I eventually had to go home and say, hey, this is what's going on. Um, we were happy and scared at the same time. Um, I think I was more terrified than he was, just obviously because of the anatomy of the woman, right? And just the concept of thinking like, OMG, I'm gonna be a whole mom, or uh, like the process itself, like I've been feeling terrible, like what is going on? And all these different emotional feelings just came and appeared. Um, Now, after adjusting to it, we had to decide that, we didn't want to tell anyone as of yet. It was something that we wanted to see how, just adjust, see how it goes. Like we always knew that people like did not talk about it quickly. And I I didn't have an OBGYN. So that was a big deal because the one that I had didn't deal with pregnancies anymore. She was on her way out. So I had to find someone else. So I was recommended this this OBGYN, and she was an African American woman, a Caribbean descent, or yeah, I think she was Caribbean descent. And I felt comfortable because I believed that she understood my experience. Though I found the OBGYN and everything was fine, I think the hardest part, which I probably should have mentioned already, was that this took place during COVID. So a lot of my appointments were by myself. There's points where, my husband would come, but he would have to wait in the car. And I think that was another hardship because, you see other people who have experiences, with their spouse or partner, and, they're going through the whole thing together. And I think at that point, I, in some stance, felt alone. And then in the reality of things outside of the doctor's appointments, I was home, right? Our work schedules were totally different. My husband was working, and he would come home 3 in the morning. I'll be working a regular like 8 to 4 shift. I'll get home before he gets there, and I'd literally be alone, going through my symptoms alone. And it did become some form of draining. And there, it did take a toll, I could say, or there was some strain on the marriage at that time. So when I was experiencing my symptoms of pregnancy, I can say that there wasn't too many hardships. I wasn't as nauseous, like maybe in the beginning, but I didn't have much nausea. I didn't throw up. But something that stuck out to me was feeling pain. And the pain specifically would happen maybe around 5 a.m. And I would wake up. I'd get up on maybe all fours and just like feel through that pain for like almost 30 minutes every day. And I felt like, I was like, is this really what it's about? Like, how am I feeling this pain? And I would go to my doctor and I would mention, I'm feeling these pains every morning. And she would say, oh no, it's your first pregnancy. It's normal. So I took it as such. I believed that it was normal. Then there were times throughout progression where, I would feel, certain things like I don't know how to explain it necessarily. But what I can say is as the pregnancy progressed, there were times where I would say the baby would stick out. Um, and I thought that was a little abnormal, um, which I also brought it to my doctor's attention, and she didn't, I don't want to say she didn't believe me, but there wasn't significance. And she felt as if I was too, like, it was my first pregnancy and it was a little too early for me to even feel that. So it kind of went by the wayside. First pregnancy, I'm thinking this is just how it's supposed to go. In my mind, it was solely like, okay, I don't really know much, but they do. So I'm just gonna trust the process and allow everything to progress. I did mention it to my mom. She was unsettled. Um, but I personally didn't really know how to advocate for myself. And I think that was the hardest part out of all of it because I became dependent on, I guess, what the doctor would say or believed, just not knowing that I should listen to my body and allow myself to take certain things seriously. But at the time, you just don't know what you don't know. My husband also didn't know either. Like he's just going based off like how I'm dealing with everything. So it's kind of hard for him to say anything, and not in a rude way, but it's hard for him to like kind of give a suggestion like, yeah, you should, you know, go back and mention this and try to get more information because he doesn't know what I'm feeling either. He notices that I stated something prior, but if the doctor says okay, it's okay. And I think what struggles really happened within the marriage was just the disassociation for him, um, and the pregnancy. Like, yes, mentally, like, okay, there's a baby coming, but because he's not in the rooms with me, because he's not experiencing it with me, it's a different reality for him than it is for me. And I think that was also something that was hard as well because it felt as if he wasn't as excited as I would have, you know, thought he would be. And that probably was not the case. But I think at that time, especially during COVID, it's just, it's hard. It was just hard. And I know, I've heard moms say like after the baby is here, that's when the husband, gets more involved. But at that time, I just believed that he needed to be just as involved as I was. This specific time, I want to say, and maybe close to getting into the second trimester. I was five, almost 5 months, the beginning of 5 months in, right? Probably ending the fourth month. I went to my appointment as usual, and I was waiting to be seen. Once I was directed into the exam room, the doctor came in, and usually, which this is all based off like what I remember now. So I'm seeing the inconsistencies, but usually they ask you for your name, date of birth before starting like the exam and just, how you been feeling. This particular time she didn't. And she just went straight to the, how are you feeling? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm okay. And she talks about a test that I did. And I was said to her like, oh, I'm not sure if I did that test. And she was like, oh no, it's here. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, we want to do a gender reveal. And so, um, how long would that be? Like, how long would I wait? Can I do the blood test, or um, do I wait till the sonogram? And she was like, "Oh no, it's here already." And I said, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's here already. I'll tell them in the front to get you the paperwork." I said, "Oh, that's amazing. I don't want to know, so please." And she was like, "Yeah, sure." This time she's like, "Normally we'll do a little sonogram, but I'm just gonna use the Doppler." And the Doppler pretty much just, you put it against the stomach and you hear the heartbeat. So you don't really get to see the baby like moving or anything like that. You just hear the heartbeat and everything. So I'm like, okay, this is the first time that that has occurred, because every other time we've done a sonogram. So I was like, okay, that's strange, but like you only get to see your baby at that time. I think it was like twice a month, I think, or once a month, somewhere around there. And so I was looking forward to it, but she just wanted to do the Doppler, so I was kind of disappointed that day. And I was like, all right, fine, no worries. Did this. She was like, everything seems okay. You just go to the front, they'll give you the paperwork and then schedule the next follow-up appointment. I said, sure. Went to the front, got an envelope, and scheduled my appointment. I said, all right, guys, thank you so much. Left. Got to my car, and then my phone starts ringing profusely. Like, it's ringing, and I'm like, I don't know this number. I let it ring out. It rings again. I'm like, why is it ringing so much? I'm like, well, I don't know. I was like, let me just answer it. I answer the phone, and it's the doctor's office. And they're like, hey, can you come back? The doctor just needs to see you. Just come back. And I said, I'm already at my car. Like, really? They're like, yeah, come back. I got back, and they said, hey, where's the envelope? I was like, oh, it's right here. I just took it with me. I don't know. I just thought to bring it. I said, it's right here. He's like, yeah, thank you. Just take a moment. We're gonna put you back in the room. I'm like, okay. So they come, take me, put me in the room, and the doctor comes in. She's like, you didn't know that I wasn't talking about you? And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, I was looking at a chart, and let's just say the chart wasn't me. And she pretty much gave me someone's information. And that could have gone left really quickly. And that is a HIPAA violation. At the time, didn't know that. Now I do. And, she kept saying, like, I asked you about a test. You didn't know you didn't take that test. And I'm like, well, honestly, I don't know half the tests I take. So, no, I did not know that. And pretty much she was just, I guess, a little fragile, but trying to blame the whole thing on me. And I kind of was upset. And I, in my mind, was thinking, you know what, if that's the case, then do the whole thing over, do the whole appointment over, do the whole session over, like, give me my sonogram, right? But I was upset. And so I said, you know what, whatever, it's fine. Like, she was like, oh, I'm just gonna put everything for you. Like, your next upcoming appointment is gonna be, I think at the time, sonogram, or it was something else. And I was like, okay, no problem. And I left. Literally just super annoyed. Like, I was just, what was that? Like, I was fuming that day. I went home, told my husband all about it. He was just like, wow, that's crazy. And I said, okay, I'm just gonna wait on till the weekend. We had planned to go out. So this was probably like, maybe let's say it was a Thursday that I had that appointment. You have Friday, and then Saturday night we was gonna go out. Saturday night we went out to dinner. This was the first time I was like really feeling myself. Like, I didn't have the pregnancy woes or the first trimester woes. Like, I felt like, okay, like, I think on Friday I went, I did my hair, got my nails done. I was feeling like a girly girl. And when we went out, I was in a good mood. Everything went well. We ate food, we talked, and then we went home. That night, I fell asleep, I'll say around maybe 11 o'clock. My husband fell asleep before me. And I got up specifically around maybe 2 something, 2:30 maybe in the morning to use the restroom. And when I went to the restroom, because normally I need to use it all the time, I went there and I'm sitting on the toilet. I'm like, okay, great. And as I wiped, I noticed that I was bleeding. And I was like, oh, this is not normal. That has never happened to me before. And I ran to wake my husband up in the middle of the night and I said, hey, I am bleeding. We need to go to the hospital right now. I don't know what's going on, but we have to go. So we grabbed whatever, jumped in the car, went to the hospital. Um, and this hospital specifically, will not name it, but is known to be very well, right? It's a very good hospital, supposedly. And we went and we got checked in. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And they put us in a room. They asked me to describe, what's going on. I told them, like, I just woke up, used the restroom, I'm bleeding, I don't know what's happening. And they proceeded to do a sonogram. And it was, well, no, yeah, was it sonogram? No, it was a Doppler to see the heartbeat. And the heartbeat was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like 120 beats per minute. And sort of like, okay, it's going, the baby's fine, his heartbeat is doing well. So let's check to see what's going on. So they go and they check and they're like, oh. I'm like, oh. So we're worried. Like we're already on, we're already like up here. We're like, some tears are coming down. We're like, what is going on? But they calmed us down a little bit when they said, okay, the baby's okay. And I'm like, okay. So, but when they looked and said, oh, I immediately like started to panic in my heart. I didn't panic out loud, but in my heart, I began to panic. And they said, we see the membrane. And I'm like, what does that mean? So they go, okay, we're gonna go talk to the doctor and pretty much see, if we can, we could, I guess, fix it. But they didn't say any of those words, but they did say they were gonna go speak to a doctor. They disappeared. Me and my husband's in the room. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what's going on? I was like, oh my God, I hope everything's okay. You just don't know what to think. And then they came back and they were like, okay, so we're gonna admit you and we're gonna put you in a room and get you set up. And I'm like, okay, sure, fine. And so they're doing their thing. And then another person came and was like, okay, hi. I just wanted to ask, like, would you want a memory box for this? And I'm like, a memory box, what's that for? And she's like, oh, like a picture. And I'm like, a picture? I'm like, no, I don't, what do I need? No, I don't want a picture. So they put me in a room and I was having cramps, experiencing cramps. I could say that was along the ride towards the hospital. So after I noticed the bleeding, that's what occurred. So that is something that I did tell them. So in the room, they did ask me, what's my pain level? And I'm like, my pain level? I don't know. It's at a 7. So they're like, okay. I'm still clueless at this point. In my mind, I have no idea what's going on. And yeah, they hooked me up to IV and they're like, all right, fine. And they left and I'm still having these cramps. In reality, they're contractions. I wasn't adjusted at the time, but over time, once I was laying in the bed and in the room, I realized what was going on. Um, because someone else came to me, and these are like minutes are going by. And so someone else came to me and asked me if I wanted an epidural. And I'm like, an epidural? Absolutely not. That was one thing I didn't want to do. I always wanted to have like a natural birth. And so once they asked me about an epidural, I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Like everything started to click. And I was like, I am going to give birth now. This is happening. These are not just cramps. This is contractions. Like everything started to like make some sort of sense. Um, and I was like, okay. And so the next time the person came and asked me, this is probably hours after, asked me, hey, do you want a memory box? I was like, elaborate a little bit more. Now I'm more intrigued because now I know that I'm about to give birth. What's this all about? Please give me more information. A doctor did come in and along with the lady with the memory box or talking about the memory box, did elaborate and say that, you know, I am going to be giving birth. They're not sure if the baby is going to live because it's really early and normally the baby does not live. But, you know, would I want a memory box? And at that point, I was like, yeah, go for it. I would. Um, I could say at that moment, I felt sad. I kind of felt like I failed at motherhood, which sounds insane, but you don't know, you don't know what to do. And in the moment, I feel the baby. I'm feeling it move up and down. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. I'm so sorry I failed you. And this is just, this is crazy. Um, and so, I did say like a little prayer. Um, and I did say, I love you and all that. Cause they say like, there's a connection, like the child can hear you and stuff. So said certain things and then allowed everything to progress as it was supposed to. Um, it was interesting because even still, I didn't understand exactly what this is called. Um, and I ended up getting. I asked for morphine to help with the pain because the pain, those contractions are no joke. And so the pain was, when it gets to that height, like a 10, they want to give you certain things to help it. It made the 10 feel like I'll give it back to that 7. Um, and they were telling me like, okay, like, do you feel any pressure? I didn't feel any pressure, but I just know that I felt something happening. And so when I guess my body naturally pushed, that's when the doctors was able to take, catch the baby. And then they told me to do another push for the placenta. And there was like a nurse or someone there to, take the baby and, go away, right? I guess to clean him up or something of that nature. And when they did do that, they came back because they were going to prepare the memory box. And they told me that, he did not make it, or the baby was not alive. I already mentally prepared myself for that because previously the movement stopped while I was in the process of labor. So I kind of knew already that he wasn't there. Because the movement that when we got into the hospital, he was moving so much that I already knew that once it stopped, and of course, with the concept of them explaining what a memory box is and, how early I am in my pregnancy, like mentally, I had to prepare myself for something like that. And so I was prepared once I stopped feeling movement. And that's when I already knew. So just with them telling me after the birth, I was just like, okay, like I understand. Um, so so they're asking us about if we want to take the body and um, have a funeral, and these are stuff that we were not planning, and just we just you don't know what you don't know. And so this was all sporadic. And at that time, we decided that uh, we would allow the doctor to or the hospital to, you know, I don't even know how to explain it, but I guess deal with the remains, which also I could say as, a mom, like, would my mom ever do that? That kind of crushed me a little bit. Before we left the hospital, the doctor did state to us that, unfortunately, we had a preterm labor. They, don't know specifically why that may have occurred. But that is what happened. When I took that information and do a Google search, right? Usually that can happen within like the second trimester late. Sometimes it happens later than that too. There's other people that has experienced it further on. And there's certain things that can contribute to it, whether like you can get an infection down there, which can trouble, the placenta, and then, that'll affect you getting contractions and so on and so forth. And then there's also like a possibility of like a short cervix, which my case could be a situation where your cervix is short, and that's, your body needs more assistance to hold a child long term. And so what I've noticed or what I've learned was that preterm labor technically is a form of miscarriage. That's something that was brand new to me. I think women speak more about the earlier miscarriages or experience that a little bit more frequent than what I experienced. So after he left the hospital, I had a new journey ahead of me, and I went home, at least like I would say a day or two. I woke up and my chest felt like bricks. Of course, the natural anatomy of a woman's body after birth is milk production, and so I was not prepared for the milk production. And dealing with that and not having a baby, like, yeah, I had one, but I didn't at the same time. And that aspect was or could have been seen as a form of torture in my eyes. I woke up every day around 5 in the morning to pump, and then I think I pumped again around 12, and then again at night, like around 9 o'clock, and the cycle continued. Mentally, I could say I was weak. I could have easily fall into depression. But I'll thank God for my mom specifically, and then my community, my friends. They were there for me as much as they could be, because there were times where I was just, especially the first week or two, I could say, like, I would go through the memory box and then cry falling asleep with the box. And that alone, it's like, it was hard. It was super hard. And I of course, still have the box. I'm just not as attached to it as I was. But at the time, like, that would happen on every day. And so, my husband would try to assist in whatever ways. But once again, going back to the disassociation phrase or word, I realized that that's something that he did because, the experience itself led to, I could say a specific argument that we had where, I was telling him, like, it's like, you're not expressing any emotion. I'm here going through it and you're not. And, the statement that he made after was, so, like, what do you want me to do? Like, we just lost, like, our baby. He was like, so you want me to say my son died? And I'm like, yeah, I want you to say it. That was something hard for him to do. Yes, he felt sad and, he didn't like how everything happened and how, everything affected me. But that, once again, that connection that I had with our son, he didn't have it. And so I think that was what was harder for me. And just the going back to, like, him, not wanting to look, at the baby and stuff. I mean, he eventually did, after I did. But, it was just a lot of disconnect that I believe I saw. With having that happen, I believe I was also still affected because I did lose a family friend. She was like a second mother figure to me. November of 2020. And, we had got pregnant in January 2021. So having a second loss, it was definitely something where I was questioning God, like, okay, like, why are you putting me through this? Like, why? Like, what is the purpose of this loss? Like, what was that? Why did you give it to me to take it away? I just didn't understand. And I was genuinely upset. I can't even act like I wasn't. I was genuinely upset with God because, he's the one who gives life. So why give it to me to take it back? I just didn't understand that concept. And I didn't feel like I was a bad person, right? So why am I going through such a hardship as this? And it's not like I could relate to anyone because no one else has went through the things that I went through. My mom didn't, even though she tries to, like, express her miscarriage at her early stages, like, of having children. I was the miracle baby. I was premature. And so there was a baby before me that didn't make it. But hers were like the earlier stages of miscarriages. And so giving birth and all that was not a factor at that time for her miscarriage. So even though my mom tried to relate and, walk me through it, it was still a different feeling. And so I just, I felt alone. I felt alone. I, the strength to pray wasn't there. But my village or my family and my friends took the time to pour into me. I was in the house a lot. I didn't want to leave too much. Then also like the thought of pumping milk and being outside. I mean, I know people do it, but I didn't have a baby, so what am I? I just didn't want to be looked at funny for doing it. So that was also a factor. And so, my friends still made it their duty to say, hey, let's go outside, let's go do this, let's go do that. And made me feel okay about it all. Did I have a follow-up appointment? I did, because I had to tell the OBGYN what occurred. And that was also a story because, walking into a room or a place where other people have their babies or, car seats and stuff, and you're walking in there and you don't have any of that. It's, I don't know. It felt, I guess the anger brewed within me even more, being in spaces like that or just seeing someone else pregnant, right? So it took a while before I could really come to terms with what occurred and just leave it in the aspect of like, okay, God has a plan. God knows what he's doing. And there's a reason for everything. But it took a while. That was not a overnight process. And my spiritual life gradually had to go through a roller coaster. I'll leave it like that. There were some highs and there were some lows. But I could say at that point, there were just a lot more lows than there were highs. Am I grateful that I'm alive today? Yes. Am I grateful that God has kept me and, I have the opportunity to seek more medical attention and just try to get answers for what has happened? Yes, I am. But that took a while. That was 2021. We're in 2026 now. I can say I'm still scared about the idea of trying again. Am I more open now than before? Yeah, but now it's a fear, which kind of sucks. But I am happy to know what to ask for. I'm happy to know what to expect, and how I can advocate for myself a lot more now than I did then. I would pay more attention and also express to my friends, listen, if you're feeling these things that are not normal to you as an individual, as a woman, like, say something. And if your doctor is not trying to, I don't know, run more tests to make you feel comfortable, maybe you need a new doctor. And I think, not to put race into it, but being a Black woman is a little harder to be taken seriously in the medical field than other races. But I experienced that firsthand, and now I only would move forward with a doctor that cares as much about me as I do. And I think that's something that we tend to not do, right? We put our lives into these individuals' hands, hoping for the best, and of course they mean well, but at the same time too, they're just as human as me. Uh, and I have to be okay with that in some odd fashion. Schooling is schooling, but they are just as human as I am. And I have to prepare myself to advocate for me and even my husband. God forbid I'm unable to. I have to allow my husband to be prepared for a circumstance where he has to advocate for me on my behalf. I think a lot of women in pregnancy, we're sacrificing our bodies to bring our life into this world. And so that means that it's way more than just the experience of seeing a baby and the thoughts of the crib and the toys and the fantasy of it all, right? Because there is a reality that your body is going through something that it probably has never gone through before, unless you have more than one kid. But each time it is life-threatening, and each time it is serious, and each time it's different. And so we have to be able to say something, speak up, and be true to what we're feeling at any point. It could be the smallest thing. You have to say something.